Students around the world are finishing their qualifications so they can get ahead in life and make their contribution. If you are studying, researching, or thinking about it, you will need practical tips, techniques, coaching, and support to help you get finished and be successful. I'm Peter Alkemer, the Student Success Coach, and welcome to the podcast. Each episode, I interview successful students and leaders in education so that you will learn everything you need right here. You will learn about writing, completing your thesis and other projects, planning, discipline, how to get more done, supervisors, getting published, getting finished, how to have the right discipline, and many other aspects of student life. Whether you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, Google, or any other podcast platform, please leave a rating and a review. Or if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. Either way, please get in touch and let us know what you think of the show and what you want to hear more of. Please always check the show notes for links to courses, material, and plenty more so that you can use what you've learned in each episode, take action, and achieve your student success. Please also join the Student Success Coach community in our exclusive members-only Facebook group where I post regularly and you can interact with fellow students just like yourself. Remember, you can't do this alone, so reach out, get involved, and take advantage. It's my commitment to your success. Now for this week's episode. Awesome. JulieAnnes, thank you so much for coming on the Student Success Coach podcast, which is just a weekly show where we invite successful students on to talk about their experiences so that everyone listening in has just got the encouragement and the motivation and the tips and tricks to get through their own studies and be successful. So, JulieAnnes, tell us about your student success. What have you been up to? And, just bring us up to speed on what that looks like for you.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through a bit of my background. I think that's needed. So I think it gives a lot of insight into where I am today, and how I actually got there. I actually began my IT career 25 years ago as a software developer and analyst, and I was mostly working for banking for that large part of that time, and I held various roles. The last 10 years, I've actually been working in more leadership positions, leading IT teams. And what I really like about that was mentoring, coaching, and guiding, my staff. That is one of my strengths. So recently, I then decided to pursue lecturing. Both it gave me the flexibility that I was looking for, and it also, gave me the opportunity to work with students because I'm very passionate about that. Given you'll also see when I talk about my studies, where I'm actually focusing on is very much student related to actually help students progress their learning abilities. Okay, so I think from an academic point of view, what I've done was actually allows me the flexibility now to do what I want as an independent IT person. And I think without having the background and the studies, I wouldn't have been in the position that I am today. And I'm actually grateful, although it was very difficult. A lot of the time I worked and studied, even at school, and I'll take you through that. I actually, didn't always have an opportunity just to study. It was always multiple things to do. But I think that has made me what I am, and where it's brought me to, I've been very hardworking all along. And like I said, it's actually brought me to now having my own time, my freedom, and, having it all, if you want to call it that. I've got my family, I manage that, and that's the reason I'm actually at home now. And, I have a good income. And I'm not bound by anything that I don't want to do. And I think it was a conscious decision that I made at a young age to actually be in this position now. So it was not something that I thought up in the last 10 years. I've been planning for a long time that I want to be successful. So just a little bit on that. So what motivated me to actually pursue all this at such a young age? And I think for me, there was two reasons. One is that I came, I wouldn't say from an impoverished family, but I came from a family where my mother and father couldn't afford to go to school. My mother was an orphan. My father left school in grade 6, I think. I know grade 8, so which standard 8, which is now grade 6, I think. And the reason why he actually left school, I remember him telling me, was that he didn't have shoes to wear to go to school, so he was too embarrassed. And so he left school, and my mother obviously didn't have an opportunity. But you know what? They turned out to be great people. They gave us the support we needed. But we didn't have all the luxuries as kids. And, you know, that's what I wanted. I wanted more from life. I wanted to have all those luxuries. I wanted a fancy car, and I wanted fancy clothes. And I wanted, you know, just more from life. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to let this get in my way. I'm not going to let my circumstances and my background get in my way. I'm actually going to work hard, and I'm going to actually do it for myself. And that is why at the age of 10, I decided, you know what, when I understood life better, I thought, okay, well, looking at them, this is not going to be my circumstances. My circumstances are going to be entirely different. And that was the greatest motivating factor. The other thing was, so when I was in, I think it was grade 7, one of my my teachers said to me, it was actually my maths teacher. Well, I wasn't the best student, you know. I didn't have like the most flashy marks in maths and science. But he asked me, well, he was asking the class in general, and he asked, what do you want to be? And I said, I actually want to be a scientist. And he had a good laugh, and I can understand why, because I didn't have, you know, the best math mark. And he said, well, you'll have to do something about that, because this is obviously just not going to do. Nevertheless, I didn't let that stand in my way. And I think that was what was important. You know, it doesn't matter what other people think of you, and it's important about what you think of yourself and what you actually set your mind to. And I thought, well, you know what, that's great, but I'm still going to be a scientist one day. And here I am. So you know what, it doesn't matter what obstacles you have or what stands in your way. You know what, I think if you as a person are determined and disciplined, you get there somehow. And I think for all students, you know, it doesn't come without hard work. It doesn't come without sacrifices. There's a lot of that. And no one has it different. No one's journey is easier than the other. I think to accomplish something in life takes hard work. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, but I think that is so encouraging, JulieAnnes. And I think people listening in will just be so inspired, you know, especially that journey from when you were 10 and, you know, despite, you know, what your circumstances were and what you observed and what you heard from your teachers, you know, you clearly had your own independent view of where you wanted to get in your life. And, you know, it sounds like you had that sort of focus on, you know, getting the skills and the experience that you needed to achieve those goals. And I think that's something that, you know, people don't always connect, is to get the skills and to get the experience. You know, you have to do that hard work, and then you'll see the results come through. And whatever it is, it's going to be different for different people. You know, you had that view for yourself, and, you know, hopefully people who are listening in have a clear sense of where they want to get to, and then are able to take action to get there. So JulieAnnes, I mean, I remember last time I came up to, I think it was the university where you were studying, and I think I did a guest lecture there. We were talking about agile software development. So just catch us up then on your sort of recent postgraduate level studies, and maybe some of the research that you've been doing and some of the topics that you've been working on, just to further your sort of higher level education, as it were.
So I think the day I met you at the university was, well, I was still studying my master's degree, and I completed successfully with a distinction pass.
Wow.
And so I'm very, very proud of that. I think, you know, for me, just passing would have been good enough, but passing with a distinction was just the cherry on top, because I was working at the same time, and I had a little baby, which was 1 at that time. And I remember a lot of the time actually writing exams and studying, because it was online at that time as well, I was rocking her with one arm. And you'll never believe, but rocking a baby with one arm and typing with one arm probably takes 4 times as long.
Wow.
So I think, I accomplished the master's degree, and it was a fascinating piece of, if you want to call it study, that it was also in artificial intelligence, and was really centered around education. And at that time, I knew that I wanted to do my PhD and further, how you could actually enhance student learning. So when I did my master's degree, I really looked at students and how, I interviewed students, I interviewed school teachers and so forth, to understand how online learning or technology could actually help with learning, and giving everyone the opportunity to learn from anywhere at any time. So part of my dissertation was also writing up about that, and I think it actually gave me great insights into what's really happening in our economy, what's happening in our education system, and what's needed. So that brought me to do my PhD. So when I looked at the outcomes of my master's degree, I actually found that one-on-one tutoring is probably gives a student the best outcome. So having someone there in our situations, obviously classrooms cannot facilitate that, the teaching capacity cannot facilitate that. No matter how many teachers you have, there's just too many students at one time. So I thought about AI, and how we could actually use AI techniques and tools to augment teaching. And I know that AI has received a lot of criticism, when it comes to teaching, because people feel that, it's just not the same as a human tutor. However, given the constraints, of a human tutor never being present in any case, I think, and look at COVID-19 now, it's presented a whole totally new dynamic for education and studying. There'll always be a need where you need a technology to assist. And I think AI in the next 10 years will actually, it's in its infancy now, but in the next 10 years, it'll actually prove that it can exponentially grow into something that can be useful. So my belief is that, it has some way to go, but it will get there. And part of my PhD, I'm actually building a tool, a software application that's going to do exactly that. Wow. And so my specialization is AI and neuroeducation for science, technology, engineering, and mathematical subjects, which really talks about critical thinking and problem solving. Now, a large part of our population, there's a lot of energy and focus going into that. But my personal experience was with a tool, with an application. I think learning maths. You must have heard of it, but it was when I was in it was many years ago, probably about 15, 20 years ago. And
okay.
Master Maths.
Master Maths, yes.
Master Maths, yes. And the medium there was that someone speaks to you over a video. What you call it? A tape recording, and you listen to that. So there's still no interaction. And it still doesn't actually provide that one-on-one tutoring. Now, if we look at new things like chatbots and stuff like that, if we can enhance them enough, and we understand the students' cognitive as well as emotional aspects, if you speak to them like I'm speaking to you, which is a more personal, personal kind of one-on-one. What do you call it, learning session, then it would be easier to actually relate to the student. Now, the advantage of what machines give is that they don't get tired. A student can ask the same question 20 times. A student can ask, explore questions. They can explore things that are not related. And AI actually has the ability in the near future to do that. And wow. I think that is how we build up critical thinking and problem solving abilities. It's not about listening to someone only. It's about a two-way dialogue. It's about asking questions and someone being able to answer you. And no matter how many questions you ask, you can go on and on until you actually, in your mind, deduce how, that problem was solved. And that's how you actually build up capabilities.
Wow,
Absolutely.
Julianne.
Yes.
That's absolutely fantastic. I mean, you're effectively using all this advanced technology now to help other people achieve, greater student success, and possibly at a very large scale, given that, as you say, it's independent of the number of lecturers and humans that we have available to teach people in a one-on-one basis, as you said.
Yeah, and it's going to be personalized. I think the important thing is that the student gets the opportunity to actually feel free to ask questions, not feel silly about themselves. The tutor that's going to be built also takes into account their emotions and how they're feeling, and it builds those aspects into it. Whereas previous tutors, just purely looked at giving a problem, but it wasn't based on the student's personal situation at that time. Yeah. So I think, yes, I think it'll go a far way in helping students. And that's why I'm very passionate about this. I believe, education is the only thing that's going to uplift the economy, uplift people, uplift society. And that's why there's so much of emphasis on it.
Absolutely. So Julianne, let's just go now into your personal journey as a student. So you said you got the distinction in your master's, and that was despite having a very young child in the house. And I just love that the story of rocking the baby in the one arm and then typing up your work with the other arm, and balancing all of this. It's a metaphor for, I think, a lot of part-time students. So people listening in are probably nodding and thinking, yes, I can also relate. Certainly the moms that are listening in, and the dads or whoever it is, and they've got loads of things that they need to get done, and adding something else on top of that, like part-time studying, is voluntary, but it brings that extra workload and some demands on you to handle that. So then you got the distinction. I mean, and that just proves to people that you can balance these things and you can overcome those difficulties. And right back to when you were 10, you've now achieved a lot of success along the way. And then now you've started a PhD. I mean, so you've given us a sense of what it is that you're researching, but what stage are you at in your PhD? And maybe just give us some tips and tricks for how you got through the earlier stages, such as getting that topic well defined, submitting and having your proposal accepted, and then I guess you're going to be going into some data gathering and building something, I guess, as well at some point. Understand where you are on that journey and what you've learned along the way that you could pass on to people listening.
Okay, so part of the university's curriculum is to actually have the first year, which I did 2 years ago already, is to actually draw up a proposal of what your idea is, what your topic is, where do you want to focus, and why do you want to actually, so what is your contribution to society? I think for me, when I started on that journey, I must be frank that, it was blurry. I think that the biggest part of a PhD is that when you started out, you underestimate, you're coming from an undergrad environment, and a PhD is a completely different park. So you're walking, but somewhere along the line you have to branch off. And for me, it's been just about the most challenging thing that I've done in my life so far, and it's a lonely journey for me, because a PhD is something that you walk alone. When you're an undergrad student, you have the support of your peers. There's a lot of focus in a PhD. You work alone. You work when you need to, and a lot of the time you have to think, and the ideas are in your head, and you're really talking to yourself most of the time. So for me, I didn't clearly have an idea of what I want to do. I knew roughly that this is what I wanted to do. Help students with AI technology and so forth. And it brought me to actually completing my proposal. And I think that proposal, subsequent in the last 2 years, after completing the proposal, after a year, getting accepted by the university, it's still taken me another year to actually refine that proposal. And when I actually talk about refining the proposal, it's actually 50% of my PhD thesis done. And because a large part of what I've done is actually going to be reused now. The next stage that I'm getting to is actually going to, from next year, starting to build the application. So the methodology that I adopted was design science. And design science actually says that, you know, you got to go through the process of building to articulate and promote your research. So I use design science approach, and therefore I'm required next year to actually start the building process. And through that building process, I will then actually write the rest of my thesis, which is going to be the chapters on the findings, whether this works, and obviously from there I'll draw a conclusion. So the main part of my thesis, you know, chapters between the introduction and literature review has really been done, if you want to call it that. So I'm 60% of the way there, but I don't think the remaining 40% is going to. Actually, you know, I think maybe I'm only 50% there, because the more I think about it, you know, I think I'm going to have to challenge myself and refine as I go along the way. And I think that's the thing about a PhD. You set out with something, and where you end up could be a completely different, you know, different avenue. And you need to be flexible along the way. You can't be rigid in your thinking. I think, and that's the whole thing about a PhD. It tests your mental ability to actually cope. You know, under extreme stress, because it is an extremely stressful situation. But it also, you know, I think it builds up strengths in many ways, and that's what I found. You know, I've never had mental resilience like this before. I mean, there's days where I feel well, there's weeks that I feel that my life's like a roller coaster. Some days up flying in the sky, and the next day, you know, I feel like my life's completely turned upside down. And I actually am delirious, and I don't know where I am.
Yeah.
And then when I decide, you know what, the PhD is just stop, take a step back, get out of the situation, and that's when I actually go and rest. And I continue from there. The next day, I wake up and I realize I've got a goal, and I smile. I always smile because I've got something to be grateful for, and then I move on. And that's how I've been doing it.
Wonderful, JulieAnnes, and I think, you know, that's the lesson that you know gave us there around your proposal, and how much there is that you can reuse. And I guess, yeah, it will vary for different people, but the more into up front, you keep your studies on track and gives you a lot more material to work with when you do put your final report together. I mean, I had the same experience. I felt at the time I did my proposal that I'd done too much. But actually, when it came that pressure time 2-3 years later, and I was actually quite exhausted from the PhD, even though I was enjoying it, I would always think, oh, I had that in my proposal. I could go back, and although I was a lot more confident with the material now, and I would reword and reframe and resequence a lot of that, it gave me a fantastic foundation from which to work. And I mean, in one of my courses, you teach about the importance of writing a good proposal and what should go into it. And I often think that students see it as a bit of an inconvenient stepping stone that they have to go through. But the better that they do it, the more successful they'll be in their degree ultimately, and have a greater chance of achieving the success that they wanted. So maybe, I mean, you've given us a good sense of, you know, the balance that you were trying to achieve with getting your proposal done. But looking back, what, if anything, would you have done differently about that proposal specifically? And what advice would you be able to give to students possibly listening in now that are perhaps going into doing a proposal or considering going into studies, and this would be the first step that they would have to go through?
So I think if I look back, I would have started thinking about my PhD topic more in depth than just having an idea. When you register for a proposal, though, you do have the opportunity then to actually think a lot as well. And I think you shouldn't take your proposal lightly at all. I think, like you said, it's going to form the foundation of everything that you will do later on. So personally, I think I could have, yes, started thinking a bit more in depth. I wouldn't have taken my proposal as lightly as I did in the beginning, because now I realize the value that it's actually brought to the whole process. It helped me structure and systemize my thinking. And so without that proposal, I wouldn't have had that structured and systemized thinking. So I think I wouldn't have done too much differently, with the exception of, the thinking up front. But the proposal, like, the curriculum set out, which was actually a very good idea, because during that proposal, I got to figure out a lot of things that I didn't actually expect. My topic actually was completely, if you want to call it, it completely evolved, with actually research. And with the research, there was obviously extensive, with the proposal, there's obviously extensive research that needed to go into it. And I think that gave me the opportunity to research everything was there, and therefore refine my topic, refine my research questions, and so forth. There's another thing, is that your research questions, and you'll find that they will be changing throughout. And I think that changes throughout your PhD. But it gives you a good basis to actually start from and to work from there.
Okay, JulieAnnes, I think that is so absolutely helpful. And I'm certainly going to go and look up and just do a little bit of reading on this methodology that you called design science. Which is absolutely fascinating, so that you can actually, during a PhD, you will have built something, and in your case, this AI software application, and then obviously test that and, develop some initial findings, and potentially after your PhD, that can go into some sort of commercial application potentially, or, achieve the goals that you had set for it in whichever industry that you wanted to, get that software rolled out and to achieve wider usage. So I've certainly learned something about that, and I really appreciate that insights. And JulieAnnes, just give us a sense of what else. I mean, have you got other things going on in your life at the moment? Are you studying? You said the position that you always wanted to be now, where you've got the flexibility. So just give us a sense of, how many hours per week you're able to put into your studies, and how you manage your time. And presumably now your family's a little bit more older and so on. And I don't know if you've got more babies in the house, or you're still rocking and typing at the same time. But what are the types of balancing issues that you have to deal with? And give us a sense of how you handle that mentally, practically, on a day-to-day basis with everybody else in your life, etc.
Okay. So I've got a 4-year-old. And so that was the one I was rocking. And 6 months ago, I had twins. So,
wow.
Yeah, very tough. And I think it's all about balance. And you're absolutely right. So prior to my children, I used to work 7 days a week. And I'll tell you why. Because I was in IT, and as you would know, it demands you to be on call 7 days a week, especially in banking, where there's no downtime. So I worked 7 days a week for approximately 13 to 14 hours a day, sometimes 15 hours a day. And that was for many years. You know what? I used to also take my time off to make sure that my mind was in the right place, because it was very trying. Studying as well, was very trying. So I would work, and then I would come home and I would study for 2-3 hours. So I hardly got any sleep for many years. And I used to go to gym. I used to make sure that I go and relax in the sauna and de-stress. And that's how I did it. I obviously chose to have my children much later in life because of the obligations I had then. I think when I came to the realization that, I wanted kids, things had changed. It was when I was 40. So it's never too late. But the thing is that, I have no regrets about, because like I said, it's brought me to where I'm at, and I'm in a very comfortable position now to do what I need to do. So now, just before I had my kids, about 5 years ago, I started up my own business as well. And that's really developing software. So I'm doing that, and I'm really into the app development space. I've been developing apps. I've been I was doing my master's and now my PhD, and then there's my family to look after and to cook and so forth. So it's extremely tough, but somehow I always, manage to say that, now my circumstances have changed. So I've got a nanny for 3 times or 4 days a week. And in that time, I actually work on my own business, as well as I lecture at part-time at the University of Pretoria. And I also do my thesis in those 2 days. The other 3 I dedicate to my family and cooking and making frozen meals and stuff like that. So it's very tough. With the lack of sleep, it's incredibly tough. But I know it's just a moment in time. And in 3 years down the line, this moment would have passed, and the time would have gone anyway. It's not now, but it will pass. And whether I do something, more or I do less, I believe that in 3 years, I'll be Dr. Sewparsad, which is actually motivating.
Of course.
So,
well, and I think that metaphor of visualizing or realizing what that will mean to you, and for different people it's going to be different ways in which they kind of transport themselves into the future and then look back on where they are today and say, well, it's worth it just to get through these tough times, or the lack of sleep, or the heavy demands on you to get to that goal. And I think you are just a wonderful example of putting that into practice and taking it day by day. But I think it also, what you've explained is very well thought through plan on a week by week basis. You've got your 3 or 4 days for each of the main areas of your life, and then I'm sure within those it's relatively busy. And thank you for making this time available to have a chat. So I appreciate that you've got excessive demands on your time. But I've always said that high achievers ask a busy person to get something done, and it'll get done. And you typically find that people like yourself who do have a lot going on actually are able to focus within each of those dimensions of their life, and they don't let that stress get to them. I'm sure that at times it is difficult, and I've certainly in my own life, when I've had demands, have had those days. But then I think, like you said earlier in the interview, step back, just reassess, don't panic, maybe take some time off and then come back to it. And I think another aspect of PhD studying, and I can see it coming through in your explanation, is to find a topic that will keep you going, and that you just believe in so much that when you hit those tough times, you are anchored by that topic and how much it interests you and how much value that you strongly believe you're going to be able to create for society through a successful PhD that gives you the credibility to take that topic further, potentially. So I think, JulieAnnes, just such an inspiring explanation of your life and where you're going, and how your PhD fits into all of that. And you've made the time and you've organized yourself to be able to do that. What does that future look like for you? Is this something, if you successful at your PhD, Dr. Sewparsad, you're going to launch this, new technology? Education, I think, as you said, 2020 has been a completely disruptive year, and I think education is going to look very different. So these innovations are something that are going to be very useful in the future. Where do you want to take that? What does it look like as part of your academic journey?
So I think my academic journey is going to extend into, if you want to call it, my career. And so this part of my academic journey is going to actually give me the ability to build my IT company that I'm looking for. So I'm hoping to commercialize the software after this. And I don't see it stopping, after the prototype's built. I'm hoping that I can take it much further, and it can be actually implemented in society so that it makes a difference, and that I can actually start a business off it. So that's where I'm hoping to go into the future. And like what you said, I think a lot of my planning I do ahead of time, which actually enables me to get there. Also focus. I focus every day. I have to refocus myself. And what I do to refocus myself is when I go to bed, I visualize. I visualize, as you were saying, I visualize what my future is going to be like. And I visualize of having this very successful IT company, very successful piece of software that's implemented worldwide that can be used. And I think that is the important part, and that's the crux of it, is that you have to visualize your future, make it a successful one, and that's the only thing that actually keeps you moving forward. Well, that keeps me moving forward, and it's worked all along, and I think it will work for anyone, because there's always downtimes, but just keep focused. Just focus on your goal, focus on your future, visualize your future. Pretend as if it's all almost happening. It's happening to you, and you are there. You're standing at that podium, and I've got my PhD, and now I've got my software, and the company is actually booming. So that's the way I see it.
Wonderful. JulieAnnes, this has been such an inspiring and just interesting interview from so many angles. I've learned a lot, and I just wish you absolutely every success in your PhD and in taking that software even further and doing all the wonderful things that I'm sure you're going to be able to achieve. And also as you adapt to life and to changing circumstances and everything that the world is going to continue to throw at us in the next few years, I'm sure you're going to be at the forefront of your specific field. And I look forward to having you back on the show, and we can talk about once you are Dr. Sewparsad. But for now, JulieAnnes, I wish you absolutely every the best with your studies and your lecturing and everything else that's going on in your life, and the twins, and just all the balancing that you are doing. So thank you very much for coming on today and sharing all these wonderful stories with us, and look forward to catching up in the future and having you back on the show to hear about where you've landed up in the next couple of years and how your successes just continue to build on the great foundation that I think you've built for yourself.
That's fantastic, Peter. I just want to leave with a note to students, to undergrad students. If you have the opportunity to study, grab it with both hands. I think that opportunity doesn't come by often. And even if you don't know exactly what you want to do or where you want to be, as you go along your journey, you will find your way. Just focus on your ultimate goal of being successful. And then, success means different things to many people. But if you want to be successful, I believe you'll get there. To postgrads, people doing their masters, PhDs, your topic should be something that you love, and then your experience becomes euphoric. If you choose a topic that you don't love, it's not going to be as easy. You'll probably get through, but you're not going to be, you're not going to be in love with your studies. And I think that's important. That's what needs to drive a PhD student. Do something that you love, because that will take you through.
Wow. And I think, JulieAnnes, you're a living example of that. And once again, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful and powerful interview. And thank you for those well thought through pieces of advice at the end. For yes, definitely, we've got undergrads and postgraduates listening in. So for each of those groups and people wanting to become students at all levels, thank you again, JulieAnnes. I really appreciate it. It's been a just motivating and inspiring and thoughtful interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for actually doing these podcasts. I think there's a lot of people that need it, especially now in the situation where they don't have many people to speak to. So I think it's inspiring, and young people need to hear this more often. And well done. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Pleasure, and thank you, JulieAnnes. Take care.
Take care. Bye.